Hey there, everybody. Brad Geiger here with another episode of Webcomics Confidential, and we're going to get right to it. We've got a lot to talk about today. The first question comes from webcomics.com, and it was a response to the Do a Good Comic episode of Webcomics Confidential when I talked about the importance of the quality of the comic being the number one reason for the success or lack thereof for a comic. It's not SEO, it's not social media, it's not marketing, it's the quality of the comic. And the point that I was trying to make was that was an inescapable number one thing. Everything it's the number one thing in a comic success, and the rest, the closest number two is way behind. Is way behind the quality of the comic, and you go back and watch that episode, you'll see I'm very passionate about that. So on webcomics.com, somebody came in and made a very thoughtful comment, and I'm going to be honest with you. I responded to it, and then it stuck in my head and kind of challenged me. This was last week. It was on my mind all weekend. And I've been waiting to get an opportunity to record this episode because I think it requires, again, a little bit more of a nuanced response that I'm able to do in a typed comment. So number one, kudos to you. You really made me think. You really challenged what I was saying there, and so I want to delve into it a little bit closer. So here's the comment. What is your retention rate? You talk about keeping your audience when they find you, but I have no idea what success on that metric even looks like. Based on your premise, good comics retain readers who come to their site. That means that taking the total number of visitors and dividing the visitors per day should give a semi-statistical evaluation of quality. Judging from my analytics, I turn about 1 person in 50 who checks out my site into a daily reader. Expressed as a percentage, I'm looking at a reader retention quality score of 0.5. Is that good? I have no idea. So my response to him was this, and forgive me, I'm just going to read through so you guys kind of catch up. And my response was, me either. I said, can I be honest? I think that's just as misguided as trying to find the magic hashtag. In fact, it's really close to the old how many page views spell success question I get quite a bit. I can't give you a reader retention quality score that will spell success. I can't tell you that moving from an RRQS of 0.5 to 3 is going to enable you to quit your day job. I do know I want my comic to grab readers and make them want to read the comics, archive, books, future updates, etc. And I know that I would want my RRQS to be higher rather than lower. But spending time trying to analyze the perfect RRQS score, I'm not sure that's a great use of your time. He responded, and well thought. I'm not going to. He responded with a super well thought out post. I'm going to let it scroll on your screen. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but here's some of the high points. I'm not looking, he says, for a magical number that spells success, but I think that checking retention rates between successful comics would be a great way to judge whether your idea holds water. Oh, and by the way, I don't know, as I'm going to say in a couple seconds, the reason I'm not sure it would be fascinating. It would be super fascinating to do. I don't know that it would make it hold water, but I'll tell you this: it would be next to impossible to do, because if you went to 100 different people who were doing successful comics and asked them to share your analytics with you, maybe 5% of them would. And of that 5%, I would be very suspicious that 3% of those, or half of those, 3% of the original number, would be lying. I don't know that I trust them, because I know from doing this for a long time, people lie about their numbers constantly. It's as bad as asking other sizes that people tend to exaggerate on. It's something people are not forthcoming about for whatever reason. People lie about those numbers all the time. So he goes on to say, a hidden gem that has only 10,000 visitors but has retained 100 of them would be visibly superior to a massively popular comic with 10 million total visitors that has a daily readership of 5,000. I disagree. It matters what you do with those readers. If you have a huge number of readers who aren't very tuned in, I would trade that in favor of having a small number of readers who are passionate and are active readers, actively support your Kickstarters and your Patreons and so on and so forth. I know a lot of people who do much bigger traffic than I do, and I know I am doing way better on things like Kickstarter and Patreon than they're doing. It all depends on getting your readers passionate about the thing that you're doing. That's something you can't dismiss in this conversation. He says, I'm pretty sure you're wrong when it comes to the relationship between quality and success in other industries. I don't know. Oh, okay. He says, because I never said anything about quality and success in other industries. I've always just talked about comics. But he's saying that what I'm saying, this construct, is wrong when you apply it to other industries. Otherwise, the Transformers franchise will be widely considered some of the highest quality movies ever created. It seems like Paramount agrees with me on the relative importance of marketing, as they spent $200 million in marketing on the last one. You are absolutely, in fact, you just proved my point, what I've said throughout the years on this point. If I came off as saying that marketing is worthless, then I overspoke. Here's the real point when it comes to marketing. Marketing is very powerful if you use it correctly, and if you have enough money, if you have a big enough budget to really work it thoroughly. The reason that I advocate against marketing, or at least paid marketing, not unpaid marketing, that falls under social media, I'm a big fan of. But paid marketing and advertising, I'm down on, and I'll explain to you exactly why. Because where Paramount has $200 million to sink into marketing the Transformers, and they've got marketing professionals who are absolutely 100% dedicated to pushing the Transformers. I can't I don't have that kind of budget, and the people that I'm going to be working with as an independent are not going to, I am not going to be their number one client. I'm going to be the long end of the rat's tail on their chart of clients. I'm not Paramount. I'm just one independent creator, and I cannot get a marketing person to give me 100% of their time and passion, because economically they cannot afford to do that for what I'm willing to pay. So yeah, if I'm Paramount and I've got $200 million to throw around on, and by the way, you're also comparing ongoing comics to a movie, which is basically a one-time purchase. You're trying to get them to make that one-time purchase of a movie ticket. And you can argue with a franchise, you want them to buy 3 tickets over 10 years. I get that. But really, each one of those movies is a self-contained marketing project, and you're trying to get that person in the moment to take that leap and splurge on one ticket. It's a one-time thing, whereas what we're doing is very different. You're trying to build a relationship, an ongoing thing. Those are two different projections. And I don't know that comparing one to the other is particularly useful. That challenged me all weekend long. I'm telling you, I'm like, there's something that isn't hanging right with this, and that's what it is for me. If I had $2 million to throw around on marketing, and if I had people that I was their number one client, and they were going to make their bonus at the end of the year based on how well they did for me, absolutely, I'd be the biggest guy, the biggest cheerleader of marketing that there was out there. I'm not, and I don't know enough about marketing on my own. I can't target that demographic. I can't find that demographic. I might be able to craft a decent message. But even then, I'd be out of my element to really craft the kind of message that I would really need to craft. I don't have all of that stuff, and I can't hire that out because I don't have enough money to be important enough to that marketing person to really matter. It would be a waste of my money because I don't have a lot of money to be important. And I would be, and if I tried to do it myself, I would be so bad at it. All these people, Project Wonderful is a great idea. I love it. It's a great idea. You're completely throwing your money away. All right? Because you are not crafting a message and you are not really getting that demographic down to the granular level that you need to. And if you think that marketing to people, other people that like comics, if you like comics, then you like my comic. If that's your thought process, you should not be spending money on marketing. You're way off. It's way more complicated than people who like comics. All right, that's where I come into this. So going on, you say you've had 1 million visitors, except that was that whole magic wand. You have 1 million visitors. Well, okay, he says you say you've had 1 million visitors, except I haven't. I doubt that many small web comics have. I've had 25,000 visitors. I keep 500 of those as dailies, and I'm going to go ... because you're missing the point. And number one, I'm talking when I'm doing these videos. I'm talking to people who are just starting out. I'm talking to people who've been doing it 5 years. I'm talking to people who've been doing it 10 years. So when I say 1 million visitors, you got to give me a little bit of understanding there that if you just started out, then you haven't gotten to your million visitors yet. But once you've gone on for a year and 2 years, if you say you've had 2,500 visitors, then in 25,000. In 4 times the length of that time that it took you to get 25K, you will have gotten to your million. Well, no, you will have gotten to 100,000. But you see what I mean. You will, over time, get to your million visitors. Okay? It will happen. And it's not about, again, it's not about the number. It's not about the million. What I'm saying is that you will have seen a lot of people. And it's not about whether I can throw a lot of people at you today. It's, are you retaining those people over time? Take the numbers out of it. Take the million out of it. The million isn't important. It's a construct to say that you will get a lot of people at your site instead of trying to get a lot of people at your site today, which will be a waste. I'm saying you should be focusing on the long game, retaining a little bit of every group that comes through every day. That's the important thing. By the way, why would it be a waste to send you 1 million visitors today? If your comic isn't good, underline, I can send you 1 million. I can send you 1 million readers to your comic today. If your comic isn't good, they're not going to come back tomorrow. It's all about do a good comic and do a good comic every day. That's the only way you can hope to retain those readers over a length of time. That's what the 1 million readers is all about. It's really not about the number. It's about the mindset of trying to get yourself to think about retaining them day after day after day after year. Going on, think about it like this. Let's say I work really hard and manage to improve my retention rate from 1/50th to 1/10th. This is an enormous improvement in quality, far more than simply 5 times better, because no comics for everyone, and I've magically somehow managed to become literally 5 times more attractive to the average visitor, meaning that I am hugely more attractive to the people who are actually interested in the genre of the comic I'm making, assuming I've pulled off that miracle to get the 20,000 daily visitors that your magic wand would give me. Now with my measly 1/50th comic, my sparkling 1/10th comic would still need to get 200,000 more visitors. Those 200K are 8 times more than the number of visitors I've ever had. But here's the thing, and I'm going to let his comments scroll down so you can read them, because they're thoughtful, they're challenging, and they're worth considering in your mind. And by the way, you might consider what he's writing there and say, you know what, he's right. Geiger's full of shit. I am more than happy if you come to that conclusion. You've got to look out in the world and make your own decision. I will argue passionately for the things that I believe in, but I am not going to tell you to think differently. You got to think what you think, okay? But here's the comeuppance of this whole thing. This is where everything comes together for me. He has very, very thoughtful math that's going on. But here's the thing. Here's where everything comes together. And I'm going to let his comments scroll because I want you to read them and I want you to consider them. And if you read what he's written there and still come up with, you know what, Geiger's full of shit, then by all means, you come to that conclusion. I will argue passionately for the things that I believe in, but I'm not going to tell you to think differently than you think. I'm gonna make my point. I'm gonna let his scroll on because it gets very long and a little bit complicated, and I don't know that I would do a very good job of conveying it to you. But I want you to read it. I want you to consider it. And then when you do, I want you to think about this. In all of these mathematical models that he's come up with, in all of the and it's fantastic statistical analysis. It really is. It's super thoughtful. I do not think for a minute I'm downplaying it. However, the quality of the comic is so unimportant in this statistical analysis that it's taken to be a constant, and it's taken to be 100% top value constant. And that may be unfair. That may be I don't want to say unimportant. But this is true. I'm not saying he doesn't think that good comics is unimportant. However, in all of this statistical analysis, the quality of the comic, and realize there's a new comic put up, let's say 3 days a week. All of these statistics assumes that each one of those comics is 100% reader retention comic, 100% quality. I don't know about you. I'm looking back through my archives. I've never been able to pull that off. I've got some good ones that I think are super good at retaining readers that are just coming to the site for the first time. I've got some that I know are 0 on the scale of 1 to 100, and I know I've got a whole ton of them that fall somewhere in between. And I also know just from talking to people that the ones that I think are super good, sometimes other people don't think are so good. Everybody's judging this from a different perspective. They've got their own filter. How can you compensate for that? You can't. All you can do is do the best comic you possibly can and keep some of these things like retaining the first-time reader in the back of your mind as you're preparing these comics, as you're writing these comics. But how can you know empirically that you've scored 100 on this mythological scale? You can't. I can't tell you that there is some kind of litmus test that you can apply to this. That's going to tell you, oh, well, this was a reader retention comic of 56. Very good. That's better than 50%. I can't. You guys. But that doesn't mean that this is not important. That doesn't mean that the importance of a reader retention in your comic is not important. It just means that it cannot be empirically defined. What we do, you guys, isn't math. You can take a lot of analytics and apply it to it, and I'm not downplaying that. And by all means, if you get into analytics and you want to pursue that, do that thing. But at the end of the day, the quality of the comic is number one, and you can't put a number on that. And therefore, it's not going to fit into a statistical analysis. And an analysis that assumes that every comic is a primo 100% pure reader retention comic is going to lead you astray, because on some of those days, the comic is just not going to be a reader retention comic. And some days it's going to be better than others, and most days it's going to be somewhere in the middle. So that was my thoughts. And obviously that took a lot of nuance, and I didn't want to get into a place where I was putting this person down because, like I said, it was thoughtful, it was challenging, it rattled around in my brain for days after. And at the end of the day, you've got to decide which side of this difference of opinion that you fall on. I can't tell you that I'm 100% right. Neither can this person. But man, thank you for challenging me with that thoughtful analysis because, like I said, it was something that I chewed on for a long time to come.